Mr. American Girl is intended for adult audiences and may contain coarse language, adult themes, and chronically online brain rot. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, I know I'm probably looking a little too greasy to be proving my point today, but I thought it'd be fun to hop on here and have a quick chat about the American Girl skit that SNL did, I guess a couple days ago. I will, preface this with I'm not really a huge fan of SNL. We used to watch it years ago, but it's just not, for the most part, my brand of humor. But over the last few years, they've been doing some American Girl theme skits, and because this channel has basically become an American Girl doll channel, I felt like maybe it was worth hopping on here and having some, unasked for opinions about it, because I think a lot of times when these things air, people are always like, all right, well, what do the boys think? Because yet again, obviously, we have a skit basically talking about what creeps men are. So yeah, like I said, I am not a huge fan of SNL, but I also don't get offended about stuff super easily, especially if it's like a joke at me, because I literally, I mean, clearly, do you think that somebody that gets on the internet looking like this actually cares what people think of them? But anyway, yeah, so I think there haven't been a ton of opinions of this online. Again, I think this is just sort of something that goes under the radar. I think anybody that collects American Girl dolls is usually just really happy to see them be referenced in any sort of pop culture, which I think is really fun, obviously, as someone who has done a really deep dive into the brand over the last few years, because I've just found it so interesting. Because what started out as just adding a single American Girl doll to my otherwise seemingly quote unquote normal toy collection, it devolved pretty quickly into me basically getting I swear to God, I have 75 American Girl dolls in my collection. It might be more now. They just tend to show up, I guess, but I really enjoy their brand. I think it has a super rich history, just not only in just the lore of the characters, but what really attracts me to the brand is how the brand actually developed as a company. I'm really interested in toy history. I used to be a toy designer, so I know quite a bit about the toy design and manufacturing process, and to kind of almost do sort of some forensic archaeology into the brand, because it existed, in the 80s before the internet. That's when it was launched. A lot of the early information has been sort of lost over the years, because Pleasant Rowland isn't super vocal about the brand. She basically, I don't think, does any interviews anymore, and a lot of the original employees are nowhere to be found. So that's what ultimately I think made me dive so deeply into collecting American Girl dolls. I mean, again, I always preface this stuff, because I feel like when I make videos that are about American Girl, but sort of tangentially related to something else, I always get new people in the comment section. So inevitably I get really crappy comments from people I don't know. But I always kind of preface where my perspective is in all of this, because I don't think the typical American Girl collector, even though I obviously very fervently collect them enough and study them enough to warrant having a YouTube channel about it. But my interest in the brand mainly comes from toy history, and also with a heavy dash of this was something I wanted to, as a kid, and wasn't allowed to have, and that made it that much more enjoyable, I guess, to collect and see it for the first time as an adult. But anyway, so all of that's to say is the way I enjoy American Girl dolls is through basically what I call toy history or archaeology or forensics, basically buying things, learning about them, and sharing them with people. And I've obviously turned it into sort of a mini YouTube career, which has been incredibly fun. And it's been so fun getting to know all different types of people. But that being said, everybody enjoys and collects American Girl differently. So, things like this SNL skit obviously have different effects on different people. But yeah, I felt like it was important to preface that I'm not a person, and there's obviously nothing in the world wrong with this, but I think it's I guess important to know where my perspective is I'm not somebody that technically plays with American Girl dolls. It's really more buying them, learning about them, and displaying them, because I like having my walls lined with toys from my childhood mostly, even though I do have some newer things. But the thing that I love most is I always say I'm really more of a nostalgia person than a doll person, but again, heavy dose of dolls, obviously, because I really do enjoy dolls. I love the sculpture of them. I like them as art, and I like them for nostalgic reasons, but I don't know a lot about current doll brands outside of the American Girl brand, because that's largely what this channel is centered around. And I didn't really get into it until recent years, until after starting the channel. So I think, like, again, like I would say, I'm more of a like nostalgic 80s and 90s toy collector, mainly like stuff that was marketed towards girls, because that's like all the stuff that I asked for and wasn't allowed to have, and it's been fun to get them and learn about them. And then I also, like I said, I have gotten sort of into the American Girl brand as a company, because again, I think it's still kind of a fascinating company to talk about, especially like politically. I think overall it's like a super progressive brand, but there's a lot of times like a lot of things where I'm just like, I kind of can't put my finger on where they stand on certain things. And again, American Girl is a brand that is owned by Mattel, so obviously you're going to get a lot of like varied perspectives and opinions based on which department like the you look at and with the brand. So for instance, like the people designing the dolls and coming up with the stories might lean a certain way politically versus the suits up at the top, for instance, they might have differing opinions. And anyway, I don't know why I'm getting into all of this, but like I said, it's going to be a chatty video today. I'm not even in my uniform. And by the way, my hair is not like super, I put oil in my hair to try and protect it from getting like broken. I'm trying to grow it out a little bit longer. So that's why I look extra like nasty and greasy, is because I put oil in my hair to like try and protect it until I can figure out how to actually style it. But again, I don't know why I chose to be visible on the internet, because I'm clearly not cut out for it. But anyway, like we've kind of talked previously in other videos about, some people have opinions that like men shouldn't be in the American Girl like collector space and buying and selling and trading. And I do kind of understand that perspective, because I know that there are like fewer and fewer spaces for women to be safe from men in this world. And again, without getting into like a bunch of super political issues today, because I'm tired, and like reading all the dumb comments from Republicans in my comment section can get tiring at times. But at the end of the day, I do kind of understand that there are women that don't like people like me, and then a few of the other male influencers that influencer is such a stupid word. I don't consider myself an influencer, clearly. But just the men that create content in this space, I know that there are a lot of women that don't think that we should be here, because it's just like, again, yet another instance of like women not being able to escape men. So I've always tried to like be mindful of that, because I do understand that this brand was a brand that was created for girls, and it's like meant to be centered around, originally the, stories of what it might have been like to be a, 9 or 10-year-old girl at different points in history. And that was to get girls excited about history. And, and that's perfectly great. Like, I actually think that's a great thing. And again, I've done a whole video on this entire topic, but one of the like major points I like to make about all of that is I do think it's important for boys to learn about girls and their like, what it was like to be a girl through history. I think boys should know that too. So I think, it's my personal opinion that boys and men should be able to enjoy this brand, as long as that, there is like zero misogyny attached to it, which I've not seen any, like personally at least. But that's just kind of how I feel about it. I think that as long as you are there supporting the cause and you are part of like celebrating and lifting up women, I think I think that's a good thing. I think the more the merrier, which is why I'm here. Obviously, if I thought that I was here taking away from opportunities for girls and women, I wouldn't be here doing this. So all of that's to say, there has been discourse about it, and I understand both sides, because again, like I understand that anyone that's marginalized in any way in this world wants to have what we call a safe space. I know that word has been politicized quite a bit by people whose the entire planet is their safe space. But with, lack of better language, I would say, like, I understand the need for safe spaces for anyone that has any sort of struggle in this, like in the mainstream, whether it's somebody that, whether you're a woman or LGBTQIA plus, or you're a person of color. I completely understand that. And so, like I said, my presence here has always been one of trying to dismantle misogyny and the patriarchy. And these are things that I do in my real life. I obviously am pretty far left, and I, obviously vehemently detest all of the systems that have basically been put in place over centuries to oppress women. So as it relates to this sketch, and like I said, I'm coming at this just more from an analytical point of view. I'm not offended by the sketch at all, because I think this one wasn't particularly aimed at like men or boys that are like that enjoy dolls or some form of doll. That original one, I correct me if I'm wrong, I am not a Taylor Swift person, and maybe I'll lose some subscribers over that. So, I mean, if it's that important to you, I guess bye. But I'm not that into Taylor Swift, so I don't follow the lore and all of that. But I'm pretty sure that that was her. Are they engaged or something? Travis Kelce, right? I think that was his SNL episode where they did the last one. If I recall correctly, it's Taylor Swift's significant other that acted in that sketch that I talked about. This was years ago. I want to say I was still living in Oregon when I did a reaction video to that, and I don't even remember if it was good or not. So maybe don't even go back and watch it because it's been a few years. And so anyway, that original sketch I did not really care for, because I think that that one was aimed at men, basically calling men creeps, for lack of better word, and maybe words, trying to avoid words that will demonetize this video. But I really did not care for that sketch, because I understand that like on the surface level it's funny, like you're just you're trying to poke fun at somebody that like might be a creep. But the problem is we don't have a lot of examples of men not being treated as creeps, or particularly boys. Again, like I said, I don't particularly care what the public thinks of me, because I've just gotten to a point in my life where the less I care about that, the happier I am. And so it's just super easy for me to have a channel like this, because when people leave mean comments, it doesn't even come close to like outweighing all of the nice things that people say to me. So anyway, but everybody's different. And I don't really love media that's basically perpetuating the idea that men, straight, gay, or otherwise, enjoying dolls, like that's something to be looked at as like you're a creep. Again, avoiding words that will get this demonetized, but like basically like putting adult themes into what I think is like a perfectly like you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to worry about the monetization of this video. But all of that being said, if you are still watching with your kids, like maybe put the kids in the other room or whatever you do with them when like the parent needs alone time. So anyway, so from here on out, I'm not like going to worry about if your kids can hear this video. So yeah, whether this like gets demonetized or not, whatever. But I obviously am not like a prude or anything, but I make very like obvious, in my opinion, a very concerted effort to not make like adult themed jokes. Like I cuss and stuff, but what I mean by adult themed is stuff that is like X-rated humor in this space, because it's, to me, it's like the most obvious humor to make in a place like like in a space like this, as like clearly SNL like falls back on like making jokes about oh, this man is a creep because he's like around dolls or whatever. So I'm one of those people that really like actually kind of gets annoyed when things are like overly sexualized, and all of that stuff is like shoehorned into areas of life where it's not relevant. Like I find that stuff really, tacky is not the word, but I just think it's like not everybody wants to hear it. And I just, again, personally, I just don't love that. So that's obviously like, I think I made like one joke like that once, and I meant to edit it out and I forgot. And I get that people thought it was funny, but at the end of the day, I was like kind of mortified, because I was like, I should not have said that, even though it wasn't like terribly offensive or anything. I just, again, this is not a space for that kind of stuff for me. If that's your thing, that's totally fine. But I generally avoid that stuff, mainly just to give people a break from it, because it's just fucking annoying, right? So that's why I really didn't like the original, or I shouldn't say original, but that like sketch from a few years ago with Travis Kelce in it, because it was just sort of like, okay, this is the most obvious joke to make, and it's like punching down, I feel like. So yeah, not a fan of that one. And then there was the I can't remember when it was more recent. I want to say in the last year or so, they did another American Girl sketch on SNL that I thought was pretty funny, actually. It was very clearly written by people that grew up with the brand and love it, and were poking fun basically at like children reading stories about historical trauma. but it was done in a delightful, loving way, I feel like. And interestingly, I think I saw that American Girl's like New York store is like close by to SNL's studio. So that's probably one reason we're seeing a few like skits about the company, just because they're probably fresh on everybody's mind if they're walking by that store like every day when they go to work. But I'm really curious if Mattel is signing off on these sketches, because I kind of think they probably are, just based on the fact that they are using dolls and branding, and like they're not saying like American person doll, they're saying American Girl. I think they even use the term truly me in the episode from the other night. So I kind of think American Girl is signing off on these, which is kind of that like dichotomy that I was talking about just a bit ago. It's like, and this was the point I was going to make, is like I feel like there's probably parts of their team that are like that would not be into that. Like I feel like I don't know what American Girl thinks about my content. I'm sure they've seen it because of like all of the like adults making content about their brand. My channel is sort of like up there in views. So I would imagine if they're paying attention at all to what, greasy old adults are saying about their stuff, they've probably at least come across a video or two of mine. And, I love the brand, and I obviously try and talk nicely about it most of the time. I don't really want to be one of those channels that just complains about everything, because I don't see the point in that. Like, I like to celebrate the things that I like. But at the same time, not only will I be critical and try and critique things from a point of love and respect, but, I do make a lot of jokes sometimes that are, I don't know, maybe not brand friendly for American Girl. Again, not X-rated jokes, but I cuss. And, again, my channel's for adults consuming it. And that's the stuff that I watch, and that's the stuff I want to make. I have zero interest in making like doll content for children. I don't know. I think maybe having grown up being somebody that was bullied quite a bit, and I just was always like, growing up being not straight, like always, and especially like having some gender issues growing up as well. I always like kind of approached people from the starting point of, okay, they're probably not going to like me, and I need to figure out if this person is like a safe person or somebody that's going to like me. So like that's like my own thing to deal with, that I often will assume people don't like me and they have to prove to me that they do like me, but I start from a default of they don't like me. So that's probably like one reason. I just assume that the like people that work at American Girl are like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, we don't like what he is doing for the brand. We think that he's gross and like, what a creep. And why would he make a joke about this? And why would he say we should have done like this differently? So, I don't assume that they like my content. But again, it doesn't matter. Although that said, like I was getting at before, I kind of feel like they are signing off on these skits at SNL just because they're able to use all the branding. And you got to remember, people that design and make and promote these toys are ultimately adults at the end of the day. It's not thankfully, it's not 9-year-olds that are doing all of the labor and everything. So anyway, this isn't really a segment about whether American Girl likes me or not, but I guess it just was to make the point that I do think that they sign off on these things, and I think that they think they're funny. I would not be surprised if American Girl had to sign off on these skits. So I thought that was like a really interesting thing to think about in terms of this sketch. But again, I didn't think this skit was particularly funny, but it's not because it was like offensive in any way, because I don't think this recent skit was about men that actually, or boys that actually enjoy dolls. This skit was basically about how like men are creepy and like shoehorn, and not, again, not all men, but all are men. Is that the saying? Not all men, but all are men, are the ones like shoehorning like adult themes into places where they don't belong. And that's the part, like, I understand like the point they were making of it. Again, my saying like it wasn't that funny was not from offense. It's just sort of like, I think it's just because it's Saturday Night Live and they have like 2 days to write the sketch. They didn't have much, like, it just was kind of like a dumb, like, one note kind of joke. But yeah, I think it's just like my main thing was like, this is the obvious place to go with this. Like, men are creeps and they're going to insert, X-rated themes into, places where it's actually kind of creepy to do it. So again, I think that was the point of the skit. It wasn't like, oh, how dare you say this about, like, the point they were making was like, yeah, men are creeps. And I do think that that is funny. But like I said, I just wish we could get some more like nuanced approaches at this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like I said, there are three American Girl skits that I can remember, and two of them are about how men are creepy, which, again, very true. I've seen some horrible things in my DMs, which I don't like particularly appreciate. And it's like super tiring, but I get where this skit came from because, like I said, I understand why there are women that are in the American Girl collector space that do not like men being here, because I understand that the sight of a man can be triggering. Whether or not they are like a good person or not, that's still triggering. So I kind of get where the skit came from, because it's like it's from a frustration of like men are terrible and insist on inserting this everywhere possible. Like again, that was the joke. But yeah, like I said, it is kind of frustrating because, like, just as somebody, like I said, who is a toy historian and has like amassed a giant toy and doll collection, it can be frustrating that like the preconceived notions that people have of you for doing something that's completely normal. And again, I know I'm not the first person to say this, but all of the like all the stuff that I collect is like for the most part marketed towards girls, and that's all, like, those are the things, particularly with dolls, that's where we start to see like a lot of misogyny in our culture, because like no one gets made fun of for collecting or playing with anything else other than dolls. And I think that's very intentional. It, again, misogyny is super insidious. You're going to find it everywhere in every corner of this earth. And that's another place you see it. Again, it's no coincidence that the only toy that has some sort of stigma around it is dolls. And again, they have been traditionally almost completely marketed towards girls throughout, the last 100 years. And I've always understood and tried to relay the point that misogyny affects every single person on this planet, including straight white Christian men. We are all negatively affected by it. So I'm not trying to like make this specifically about me and how misogyny like affects me the most, because it obviously doesn't. But like I said, being a not straight person in this world, like, misogyny is like a big part of why like homophobia is such a problem. That is like a close relative. Like, misogyny and homophobia are very close relatives, which is why it's like always crazy to me when you can find women that are homophobic, because it's the same mechanism that oppresses them. But like I said, I know that this video is like super windy and rambly today, because that's where my brain's at this point. I'm packing up my entire life to move to Australia in a few weeks. So I've got a lot of thoughts like pinging around. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of a crazy time in my life right now. But yeah, I don't even know if I have some like major point to say about the video now that I've sat down and like started rambling about it. But I will say, like, the skit came across my feed on TikTok, and just to like scroll through the comments again, you can just sort of see like a lot of the preconceived notions that people have just about like an adult owning a doll, which, there are a million different reasons an adult would like want to do that, and most of them are valid. But it's super frustrating, obviously, when people just continually think that you have like bad intentions, or you're a bad person, or you have like impure, I don't want to say impure, because like purity culture is like another fucked up thing that we all have to deal with, but people think you have like sinister like motives behind doing something as simple as just like wanting to either collect or own or study a doll or a toy that, was something that you remember from your childhood that, is just something fun to do. So I think one of the most important things you can do is just learn to not care what the unwashed masses thinks about, if the things that you enjoy or do, as long as you're not hurting anybody. Like, obviously there's nothing wrong with anything that any of us do. So I think that's like also an important takeaway. I think especially if you're somebody that watched that skit and like felt, a sense of shame or embarrassment, whether it's from like what the sketch was saying, or particularly what the comment sections on that video looks like. It's, again, you just got to remember, these are writers that are showing up to a job. They have a skit to write, and like, I can imagine they like write these in a matter of like 2 or 3 days, and their goal is to try and get the unwashed masses to laugh and tune in. And sometimes people just like do not like, a B minus or C plus at their jobs. And, that's what I kind of feel like this skit was. It was just like a really like the most obvious joke you could think of in terms of the American Girl brand. But again, their audience is not American Girl doll collectors. They are just looking at for something from pop culture that people will recognize and have a point of reference when they make, like, again, a very pedestrian, stupid joke. But again, am I personally offended by it? No, I just think that it was the lowest hanging fruit possible, and which is why I personally didn't think it was funny, because it wasn't like there wasn't any nuance or anything surprising about it. That's why I thought it was funny. It wasn't because I felt like that was calling me out for anything specifically, obviously. But anyway, yeah, it's just always interesting being an adult like toy and doll collector and seeing what the like general public thinks of you. I mean, again, it's not that I clearly am not embarrassed about like my interests and the things that like I do on a daily basis, but I've said this before, like I don't lead with the fact that I have, 75 to maybe even 100 American Girl dolls and I have a YouTube channel about it, because of everybody's preconceived notion of like there's just a million things that people are going to assume about you if that's the first thing that they know about you. So, I do like to let people get to know me first before telling them my dirty little secret. But, at the end of the day, it's just like that's how I've had to be like before even like starting to collect toys, is that, like, as I mentioned before, I kind of come at people assuming that they're not going to like me from preconceived notions to begin with. And I kind of have to work out whether or not like they're actually a genuine or a cool person before I, let them get to know me more. That's just been a defense mechanism I've had my entire life. And maybe, if you're watching this video, it's something that you can kind of relate to as well, that you might not be either neurotypical or somebody that just again just has a special interest or whatever it might be. You just feel like the society as a whole doesn't quite understand you. But I get you, and I think that's like the most important thing, is like trying to figure out in life what actually makes you happy and what gets you out of bed every day, and what do you think about that excites you when you're in the dentist chair having your mouth drilled on? What's your happy place you go to? I think figuring all of that stuff out and, unabashedly being into it and not worrying about other people, as long as you're safe. Again, I'm not like going out like in dark alleys at night saying, hey, I'm a doll collector, come stab me. But at the end of the day, I think it's really important to judge yourself based on your own internal moral scope and not what other people who are damaged and have their own preconceived notions about things. It's not important what they think. That's one of like the big problems with people, is like we tend to try and put people in boxes so we can categorize them, we can understand them. I think that's really truly a like part of evolution, is we have learned how to categorize people in a way that we can make sense of the world so it seems less scary. And I just think that that's a big part of things that happen. It can happen whether you're a doll collector or whether you're transgender or whatever. People want to say like, okay, this is the box you go in and here's all the things I know about you. Then I can put a bow on that and I can go about my day. And you got to really like make sure you can spot that so that you're not carving your life out in a way to make other people comfortable. Because I did that, earlier on in my life, trying to walk on eggshells, making sure that people were comfortable around me, because I think I made people uncomfortable as a kid because I was not like perfectly like a perfectly masculine boy, and was very like clearly going to grow up to be not straight, which, it's not always obvious, but sometimes it's a little obvious. And so anyway, without getting into that problematic conversation, I'm just saying, like, I spent a lot of time when I was like really, really young knowing like actually what it was like for adults to be uncomfortable around you. And I spent a lot of time and effort as I got older trying to prevent that from happening, because it's obviously a really icky feeling when you're like 7 years old and an adult is like going like, you want what for Christmas? So that's just followed me around, to some degree throughout my life. But it's been one of the most important things that I've deconstructed, is really like trying to understand, like, am I doing any harm on this earth by this thing that I'm doing or enjoying? And if I'm not, then why do I care if somebody else thinks that I am? If I truly believe that I'm not, and I know that I'm not, it does not matter what somebody else thinks. And the quickest path to unhappiness is worrying about what other people think about you, because newsflash, you can twist yourself in knots to try and make yourself palatable to people, but there are still going to be people that hate you. There are people that hate Dolly Parton. So, you just cannot win with people and how judgmental a lot of them are. And it's just, I think the most important thing you can do, as long as you can do it safely, is to completely be yourself and like the things that you like, fully enjoy them, do not apologize for it, and you'll find the right people. And the people that are going to judge you for it and be shitty people and make fun of you or treat you with disgust, those are the people you don't want around you anyway. Like, why would you contort yourself to be liked by people that you don't even like yourself? So anyway, I feel like this took a huge random turn. I probably should let you go, because you're probably like, okay, you made your point. But yeah, all of that was just mainly because, again, the sketch didn't really like trigger me in any like sort of major way, but it did start to make me think about, like, oh, this is what people's preconceived notions are about, like the doll world and people that, just enjoy this thing as a hobby. But at the end of the day, we can't really control what people think. I mean, I can get on here and preach to the choir all day long about this stuff, and it's fun to hang out and like have a conversation about it, but you just have to, at the end of the day, like, be willing to accept the fact that people are just going to be wrong about you. It's no matter who you are. That's just going to happen. Whether you live a small life or a really big life, you're just going to have to accept the fact that some people will just form a completely inaccurate opinion on you, and they're going to carry that with them for the rest of their lives, but it's not on you to carry it as well. So anyway, I hope you had fun today having a quick chat. I'm not sure what video is coming out next. I think we might look at my Felicity collection, because I did like a 2.5 hour long video of the entire Felicity collection, like breaking down every single item in it, talking about first editions and manufacturing processes and, what's like different from the catalog. And I think it's going to be really fun. I'm not sure if that's the very next video of mine you'll see, but it's coming up really soon. So be sure you're subscribed if you're not already. I'm trying to get to 10,000. We were so close to 10,000 subscribers, and that's like so mind blowing to me. So if you watch my videos regularly and haven't hit the subscribe button, I would love it if you would do that. Also, hitting the like button on videos like this really helps them out as well. And I guess might as well plug the Patreon while I'm at it. Like I said, I'm in the middle of a big scary move, and any sort of consistency I can have during that process is very much appreciated. So yeah, we have all kinds of videos like this on Patreon as well that are exclusive to there, and it's super duper cheap, but goes a really, really long way of supporting this channel as well. So yeah, other than that, check out idreamofjohnny.com. I've got not only some merch for sale there that I think is pretty cool, but I'm also selling off a lot of stuff like from my doll collection and stuff. So if you're looking for anything special like that's vintage Pleasant Company, be sure to check that out, because there might be something there you're looking for. And yeah, I guess if you want to keep hanging out, got other videos. You probably got one on your screen right now, and maybe I'll see you there. All right, bye.